All right. Good evening again. We're going to get underway. Welcome back. We may have a few more people trickling in. So thank you again for coming tonight. It's fun to see so many familiar faces and many online. I think we have close to 70 online as well. So that's fun from coast to coast, which is great. So you've joined our third Cal Series event tonight. It's our third in our 4 talks. We'll have one more next month talking about historical events and cultural ideologies. We've had so many parents come through here, as you know, wishing that they could have been classically educated. I am one of them. And we hunger to know what our children know. We find ourselves actually learning from our children. I don't know if those who are parents in the audience, if you've had your children educate you at the dinner table since they've joined Cal, but they have a lot to share. And I know one mom, she's got her kids fighting over who gets to tell her first what happened at school. Every day. And they're sad, by the way, when they go to I love this story. They go to a pizza parlor. Mom lets them play, the littlest, some arcades, and the little girl, Emma, she says, "Do you know why I'm kind of sad?" And Mom's like, "No, why?" And she said, "Because I'd much rather be at school than here." So, note to self, right? Let them live at Cal. So this third talk is an outgrowth of your desire, actually, to further your own education. And so we are going to give you a sampling tonight of what we teach in the classroom, but we're taking a deeper dive for you. This talk tonight is entitled A Brief History of Communism. Why are we still talking about it? It's been more than 150 years since Das Kapital?
Communist Manifesto, yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I got the right pronunciation. And was published, since it was published, and we're still trying to determine the difference between communism as theorized and as practiced. So what does the past tell us about today's interest in collectivism and socialism? So before we begin, as you know our speaker well, he always has a very interesting intro. So wait till you hear this one. So Mr. Preston's family found communism a frequent conversation topic. Sounds like an interesting family, doesn't it? And that's because his father grew up in Washington, D.C., and his dad rubbed shoulders with many of the top Cold War leaders in the city. His father's best man at his wedding was the civilian head of the National Security Agency. They often joked that the NSA stood for no such agency. And his dad's best friend at high school was the head of the Air Force Intelligence in the 1980s, and he was the man responsible for determining the true cause of the Soviet shoot-down of the Korean Airlines Flight 007. Actually, when he publicly revealed what the truth was about that incident, and that it was different from the original version, his dad's buddy got fired. While these friends obviously could not share all the details with Mr. Preston's dad, they were able to paint a broad brush of the intent of the Soviets, the Chinese communists, and other communist regimes. It's a world of international shadow wars, lies, and outright genocide. The realization that today's students are not being informed, and in some cases, downright misled about the history of communism was actually a motivation for Mr. Preston to get into teaching back in 1998. And at that point, he had been in the industry, the investment industry, for over 20 years. So he made a huge career change to follow his passion, and we are so grateful he did. Mr. Preston's trip then further in 2013, his trip to China with his brother and their 2 adopted Chinese daughters gave him current insight into a regime that often will shake your hand, but as Mr. Preston says, recommends that you count your fingers afterwards. So please welcome our renowned speaker, Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you all for being here on a Thursday night. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that you might normally want to do, and other than hear about what most of you probably have some knowledge of already, but probably at times feel like you're the only one that remembers this history. It's just something all of us here in this classroom lived through. We remember the night the wall fell. We remember hearing about people getting shot trying to cross the Berlin Wall. We remember hearing about the killing fields in Cambodia and things like that. These are things that are completely unknown to your children and grandchildren. And that is, I believe, intentional. So let's kind of do a little bit of a refresher, if we will. Some of you may find some information here that's new to you, but a lot of it will be a reminder. And I'm looking forward to a lively question and answer period when the presentation is done. And I'll do everything I can to make sure that we repeat the question for those of you who are joining us online, and welcome. And anyone that wants to share online commentary or questions, there is someone monitoring this over in the Cal office, so we can do that too. We've had some fun trying to work out some technical things, but we think we got it worked out so that we can go ahead with the presentation. So moving forward here with our presentation, most speakers try to start off with a little joke, and number one is, if socialism is a taco, this is what it looked like. Just a shell with some lettuce, and not having enough money for meat or cheese or sour cream or anything else. And then you hear a lot these days about equity. Equality would be the people on the left. You know, they're all getting the same box. Equity would be, well, we're going to adjust for that so that nobody really can see very well. And capitalism gives everyone a chance to build those boxes as high as they might want to. And then finally, you all probably heard about the Marxist organization Black Lives Matters, and the New York Post headlined it Black Lives Manners. I've heard also another one is buy lots of mansions is another one I've heard. But, you know, without getting into a personal situation, the fact of the matter is that Marxism, communism, socialism never has worked. And by design, it probably never will work. What it creates is a new group of elites who will then benefit from the power and anything generated by that. In this case, the corporate shakedown of this organization has allowed the people who run it to be able to live a pretty good life. All right, let's get into some of the specifics. It's been around for over 150 years. Yeah, this is one of my favorite cartoons. Everyone else has tried this has gotten hurt, says the person. The person with the fork says, yeah, but everyone else did it wrong. If we can move that, I don't know if I can get that out of the way. If anyone can figure out a way to do that, I'd love to see that happen.
Get my IT department.
Anyway, yes, so my technical department's going to come over here. I think the Chinese hacked into our Zoom before we got started. I'm just kidding. I don't even see a cursor. See, that's half of the problem.
That's our issue there.
That's a good slipping.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to try this. Oh, that's not going to work either, is it? And,
We'll get around it for tonight.
well, and now I've got that other bar in there. Isn't that special? I think if I pull it down to the bottom here.
What's interesting is every time we start this, it does something different. Every single, and we've probably done it 15 times. It's very odd. So
Okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say goodbye to this.
Thanks for your patience.
And I'm going to move this down.
Minimize that.
I did try that before.
Okay.
That's minimized as much as I'm going to go. And now we go back to play. There we go. Yay! Yankee ingenuity.
Oops, I'm so
Okay.
sorry. Okay, go ahead.
And I don't mean that as a baseball fan, Colonel fan. So it's been around for about 150 years and it keeps seeming to come back. The words and labels may change, but the concepts don't. And those who are ignorant of its goals are enticed by the concept because the end result is sold as a greater good. And who doesn't want a greater good? I mean, I understand this. We all understand this. We've all were at that point in time where we were young, idealistic people. But we used to get a very different education as young, idealistic people in higher educational institutions than we're getting today. All right. So I'm a great believer, and I know that Cal is too, that words mean things and they're important. So let's look and define these terms. And these are not my definition. This is right out of Webster. Okay. Number one, what is socialism? A way of organizing a society in which major industries are owned and controlled by the government rather than by individual people and companies. And the irony of this, of course, is some of the ones who are using this language the most are the ones who've gotten the most wealthy through capitalism. I don't know about you, but I get a chuckle every time I see this old picture of Jeff Bezos sitting there at this old little DOS computer with a, remember the old dot matrix printer papers saying Amazon.com in his little attic or whatever, collecting from all over the country these used books. And now a multi-billionaire, we're talking socialism. My dad used to have a phrase for that. I've got mine, haul up the rope. I'm across, haul up the ladder, etc. Okay. Now you're interested in socialism. Marxism, a theory in practice of socialism, including the labor theory of value, dialectical materialism, the class struggle, and dictatorship of the proletariat until the establishment of a classless society. Never happens. The thing that's really interesting about it, it's a denial of humanity. It's a denial of 100,000 years of evolution. There's always somebody who wants to be the top dog. There's always people who don't care. Just take care of me, I'll be fine. I don't want to work that hard. That's the way human beings are. This is a denial of that. I don't want to hear this stuff it's about the science. The science says it won't work because there's always going to be somebody who wants to put in more of an effort, always going to be somebody who doesn't want to. Communism, a system in which goods are owned in common and are available to all as needed. A theory advocating elimination of private property. Now, I know that those tech industries in Silicon Valley do. Do you see any of them saying, here, you can go ahead and have my iPhone for free? No. Now, the only thing that they're offering you for free is the ability for you to tell them everything about yourself so that they can then monetize that. Okay? I got to think about Google. Okay? I hope there's nobody listening tonight who's a shareholder. Well, it probably is. I used to be a shareholder of Google. Now I'm trying to find out how to de-Googleize myself because they have everything. I've gone to Proton Mail. I use Brave as a browser. And there's a whole, if anybody wants to know, I've got a website somewhere that I've been trying to gradually follow to un-Google my life because we are giving them all this information to monetize us for free, all our data. We're getting, you don't get something for nothing. We all know that, right? So if you're not paying for it, why are they so happy to give it to you? Why all the schools now, they're caught into Google Docs? Why is this going on? Not because of the goodness of their heart. And again, I'm a capitalist. I have no problem with the main profit. Just don't kid yourself. That's all I'm saying. Don't kid yourself. Finally, what is fascism? Okay, and I added this as I started working on this because I think a lot of what's going on right now is a form of fascism. Well, we're anti-fascist. No, you're not. That's just logo. That's just, it's a catchphrase for you. What is fascism? A political philosophy, movement, or regime, such as that of the fascisti. We're going all the way back to the Romans, really, if you want to look at the fasces. There we go. There's our Latin. Or, back to the original Italian fascist that exalts nation and often race. Now, there's a familiar word. Above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression. It's blocked of as individual rights. Okay? Things that you used to decide for yourself, things that used to be decided for a state. We want more and more of the federal government to do that. That is not the way our country was designed. Okay? All right. So the Communist Manifesto, written by Marx and Engels in 1848, in which everything was all about the class struggles. This was the struggle of the workers. Capitalism was not the solution, it was the problem. And eventually, capitalism would fall because the workers would demand it, and it would be replaced by socialism by the workers. That was the concept. It's important to remember what socialism is. Everyone's supposed to get equal. Everyone's supposed to be treated equal. Everyone gets the same amount. And that is not the way human beings are built. It's not. This is what they put out as part of their information when they're providing. This came from the French Communist Party, the capitalist pyramid, okay? At the top, it's the monarchy or whoever the nobles were. We rule you. The next level is the church. We fool you. The next level is the army. We shoot at you. The next level is the bourgeoisie. We are rich, making ourselves richer. You all are getting poorer. And of course, everybody's on the back of the poor proletariat. I remember one of my favorite films in the 1980s was You Got Mail with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. And the reason there was one little part of that that really hit home to me. I was early in the investment business in those days, when she's going to have to close up the shop, and the Gene Stapleton character who was helping out in the store says, "Don't worry about me. I bought Intel at 6." Okay? But that is the nature of capitalism. Capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any other system in the world. And I'm experiencing that right now. Okay? I got very fortunate over the last couple of years, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's not because the government sent me $1,400 per person in my house that I know my grandchildren are going to have to pay back someday, probably at higher interest rates than right now, 1% for a 10-year bill. That's not going to last forever. What happens when it does? Hundreds of billions a year in interest. So this is what people were told. The proletariat, the workers, are the ones who are holding everything up. And if they just, the weak spot is the bourgeoisie. Go after the owners of the business. If the proletariat controls what was known as the means of production, which of course in those days was factories. Look at our economy today. Almost all the wealthiest companies make nothing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but software is software. They're not manufacturing. We're not paying what we're paying for. We don't even use CD-ROMs anymore. We download it all off an internet. Okay? I'm not saying it's bad at all. We're all doing very well. We're happy about it. Nobody wants to give up our supercomputers in our palms of our hand. But what is being produced now is thought. Thought is what's valuable. What's valuable is individual thinkers. What's valuable is each person having the right to say, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to come up with a solution to a problem people don't even know that they have. We've all seen that happen. You had your kids probably handing you, well, I don't need this. Yeah, you do, Grandpa. No, I really don't. I won't use it all within a month. Oh, what? It's down. What happened? We get to a point in time we realize that there are things that make our life better, quicker, faster. Remember that I went today, I think, what do I have to do today? Bang, comes up my calendar. Got to take the Subaru in for maintenance. Oh yeah, that's right, because it came right up on my phone. Okay, so that is the means of production today. Is the most valuable thing today. Is the valuable companies are thought. Okay, thought. So right away, this whole thing breaks down. Workers of the world unite. People remember hearing about that? During the 1960s, workers of the world unite. We heard it over and over again. Yeah, it didn't work out so well in the Soviet Union. Doesn't mean much difference to be able to have all those nuclear weapons. Yet people can't afford to, got to stand in line for toilet paper. Anybody want to know how bad socialism is? You never notice that you never hear about what's going on in Venezuela on the news? You're not going to see a cell phone video of what's happening to those people there, are you? But this has all changed because of capitalism, okay? Capitalism is what has changed all this. It's what the Soviets are doing. And we started that. We helped accelerate the collapse of the Soviet Union. Why? There's another movie I love, Moscow on the Hudson, with Robin Williams. He's going to go play music over in the United States for the Moscow Circus, and his girlfriend wants Jordache jeans because she can't get them there, and he's going to be able to get a Pepsi, and they're all going to go. He defects, and anybody seen the movie? He defects in Bloomingdale's because they're there shopping right before they get shoved back to the Soviet Union, and he's looking around and says, "I'm not going back. I'm not going back." And he spends his time with a very, supposedly a poor black couple, and he goes, poor, and he looks around. They got a color TV, they got a car, they got a phone, they got their own apartment. And he goes, wait a minute, my government's been lying to me, okay? Now, a surprise convert. Everyone expected that the British or the Germans were going to be the first ones to embrace communism. But it wasn't. It's going to be Russia, but only because they got a little help. World War I's going on. Germany would love to get Russia out of the war. And they come up with a brilliant idea. Let's take this communist guy who's got kicked out of the country and put him on the train and send him back to the Soviet Union and let him.
Imperial Russia.
Yes, Imperial Russia. That's right. and Lenin caused trouble in there. And that's exactly what happened. The next thing you know, you got the Russian Revolution. So sending Lenin into Russia in order to knock out the Russians out of World War I was great in one way. It got Russia out of the war, but it gave us the Soviet Union, which of course was going to make trouble for the Germans down the road. By the way, those of you who've ever read Mein Kampf, or at least heard about Mein Kampf, we know what Mein Kampf says about one segment of society. But the other ones that he was also going to eliminate were the communists. Hitler thought that Churchill eventually would side with Germany in order to get rid of the Soviet Union, get rid of the communists. That was his other group that he was trying to get rid of. Anyway, it works. There's a peace deal that's made by the Bolsheviks with with the Germans. And then not long after that, there's consolidation, as they always say, that has to go on. A civil war goes on in Russia, and over time, the Red Army defeats the White Army. And that's not too surprising. The White Army is going to be seen by a lot of people as being the friends of the previous administration, whether it's the Tsar or just the nobles or just the wealthier. The Red Army, workers of the world, bread. This is what it's all about. And so the Red Army wins, and then Lenin is starting to get rid of the people that he doesn't like when he dies. Who knows whether he was helped or not? Wouldn't surprise me. And look who takes over, a guy who goes by the name of Stalin. And once Stalin takes over the next 30 years where he's ruling, it's a world of gulags, work camps, re-education, spends years killing all the threats to his regime, including many of his former friends and colleagues. Ask Leon Trotsky, you're not even safe in exile in Mexico, okay? One of his buddies from the Russian Revolution. And the idea is, I'm going to stop all these counter-revolutionaries. And then once he kind of consolidates his powers, there's going to be years of collectivization of farms. What does that mean? Well, we're all going to have to make communism work. In order to do that, you all have to give up your individual farms, make it part of the collective. Well, I don't want to join the collective. Really? You don't want to join the collective? No problem. You're just not going to be able to get any food. Now, we hear all the time, understandably so and properly so, about the Holocaust. It's a terrible thing. How many Americans know about the Holodomor? The Holodomor. In Ukraine, they're very familiar with that. It comes from two Ukrainian words, one which means, I've got it in here, hold on a second. It means extermination by starvation. 6 million Ukrainians died in the 1920s and 1930s, and the collectivization of farms set in motion by Stalin. That's a guess. We don't really know. And there's a reason we don't know. People would go by and say, what happened to that farm over there? What farm? What happened to that village over there? What village? And you feign ignorance. One thing about the Germans, we know how many got killed because everybody got on that train. We put your name down. How many in your family? All right. What's the next street? So we got all these books of all the names. People just disappeared in this former Soviet Union. And Ukraine took it really hard because the Ukrainians wanted to keep their farms. They wanted to keep their life. What you see there in that picture is a memorial that's made to the Holodomor in the Ukraine. 6 million people. Now,
you mean they allow a memorial to be?
Oh, this is after the fall of the Soviet Union. Ukraine, remember right now, Ukraine is still kind of in a semi-war with Russia. This is what Putin was, they're over there having the Olympics and Putin's over there pushing against the Ukrainians because nobody's going to cause a fuss while the Olympics are going on in Sochi. I don't know how many of you remember that, but it was kind of a bit of a sticky wicket at the time. But also, Putin knew what he's doing. Well, people aren't going to raise a big, they're going to have an international scene when it's all this brotherhood going on at the Olympic Games. And that's been on and off ever since, and it's still going on now. Yeah.
There was a New York Times reporter who was...
Yeah, New York Times reporter who was their Moscow bureau guy who was writing about all the wonderful things going on under communism and how the 5-year plan had been very successful, and the 7-year plan was going to be more successful, and to get the Pulitzer Prize for it, and all he was doing was spitting out propaganda. And even the New York Times knows that, and there's been pressure on them by Ukrainian groups to force the Times to give back that Pulitzer Prize, and they will not do it. But they're still holding the one for the Russia hoax too, so you shouldn't be too terribly
Well,
surprised.
the New York Times, they would acknowledge the Holocaust.
Right. No, the paper of record has a track history. Don't get me started on the New York Times. We're getting into too much time. We don't have enough time to cover the New York Times. All the news that fits our slant should be their title there. Anyway, Mr. Durante, a lot of people have said for years that they should rescind that award and give it back. And it would be a good thing for journalism to set that precedent. I do not expect that to happen. Every once in a while, they bring it up and they say, well, we're still looking into it, which is saying we basically are hoping it will die down and we won't have to talk about it because it's a real black mark on their record, and they know that. They know that. Okay. The Communist Party rose during this period of time because America was going through a depression, and there was a lot of people saying these guys got the solution because we were believing what they were saying. Oh, record harvest, all sorts of food, everyone's happy. Nobody's better at propaganda films in the 20s and the 30s than the Soviet Union. If you've ever seen some of them. And then some Americans did some films. There's one called, I think, Give Us Our Daily Bread. That's a wonderful film, beautifully filmed in black and white, about collectivization is the future. Okay, nobody knew, and remember, unlike the Holocaust, the Nazi Holocaust, people didn't go through the Soviet Union later on and dig up all these graves and find all these camps and all that sort of thing. There are some records now that have come out in the wake of the fall of the Soviet Union, but they don't want all that stuff out. And a lot of it, again, you didn't write it down. Because if you wrote it down, you had to sign your name to it. And you never knew whether signing your name to that would later on anger Stalin and you're the next guy to get a pistol shot in the back of the head. So a lot of this did not get recorded. So we're having to do a lot of very broad estimates, mainly because of the amount of population we see in some of these areas and then the changes. And even that we're not sure about because later on the Nazis are going to come through in World War II. And we don't have, now did these people die from Stalin or did they die from Hitler? So that's the challenge we have. Many people in the United States became interested. What's this communism all about? Would go to a meeting, maybe read some of the books, maybe buy a book, maybe check it out at the library. That would come back to haunt you in the late 40s and the 1950s. Did you ever attend the Communist Party meeting? Okay, that's unfortunate. But that's why it was happening. Because this is what they were reading. This is what they were being told. This is what they were hearing. And the time of the Great Depression, if you're having a hard time, you're thinking, maybe this is the wave of the future. Maybe communism is the answer because all you hear is what the goal is. And you're being told this much of the story and all this is being left out. Okay. The Soviet Union's deadly actions are remembered in some areas in today's Russia. This is a memorial that was put up to a number of people who were shot during the Stalin purges. To their credit, Khrushchev kind of tried to clear the decks a little bit when he took over after Stalin and started talking about some of the awful things that Stalin had done, but he blamed it on Stalin and not on the system. Okay. So you have this red terror after the Civil War. You have the purges of all the original Bolsheviks, all the people in the gulags. In my class here at Cal last fall, when we got to the Cold War, I had our students here at Cal in the middle school read One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I want them to know what a man who escaped that system had to say about it, because I knew they weren't going to get it in most of the schools today. Okay. Talked about the famine and from the collectivization. Also, Stalin did ethnic deportations. He decided certain ethnic groups were the kinds he didn't want in the Soviet Union, particularly in some of the southern areas where there's a lot of Muslims, and in other areas where there's a lot of Slavics groups that were not cooperating. And so you just took them all and moved them out of there and moved ethnic Russians into those areas. World War II, when people forget, Okay, Hitler invades Poland September 1st, 1939. How many Americans also know that Stalin invaded from the other side of Poland on the 17th of September, and Hitler and Stalin divided Poland between each other? Okay, so while Hitler, I know, of course you do, but you know most Americans don't know this. If they know even that much, you know, we're grateful, but they do not know that it was a collaboration between Stalin and Hitler to divide up Eastern Europe. And of course, Hitler, you know, turned around and invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. I don't know why Stalin would have trusted him. Says something about Stalin. Maybe he felt, you know, I'm more evil than he is. I don't have to worry about him. I don't know. That's one great unanswered question they're still trying to figure out. And then after the war, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, good. We'll have a good discussion later on. After the war, millions of repatriated Soviet soldiers who had been taken captive by the Germans during World War II were sent directly to the gulags because he did not trust them. Oh, they didn't fight to the death. Now, to some extent, he's right. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union in the Ukraine, now remember I just told you about the Ukraine. In the Ukraine, they were treated as liberators. You had Ukrainians who joined the Nazi forces. There were Ukrainian units in the Wehrmacht in World War II. And some of the worst guards in the camps, unfortunately, were also Ukrainians. And there was a number of years ago, you all probably remember, there's a guy in Chicago who fought extradition for years and years in Chicago. He was Ukrainian, okay? But the fact of the matter is, if you've been through the Holodomor, like they had been, and the Nazis come in and said, you know, hey, we're kicking all the communists out. The Ukrainians, they don't know what's coming. Remember, they have not been aware of what's been going on. So they treated the Nazis as liberators, and there were even Ukrainians in the SS for a while, okay? So that's what's going on. Okay, let's go to the other side of that continent, or a separate continent if you want to call it that, Asia, the Chinese Civil War. Chinese Communist Party. How many of you know they're going to celebrate their 100th year this year? Oh boy, CCP, 100 years, okay? Now, the government that's been running China, the corrupt Kuomintang, is beginning to collapse from its own corruption. They're losing support. It's an elitist organization, the view of the communists. And again, the same thing is being told to the peasant, to the poor of China. Help us. We'll get land from these rich, corrupt people, and we'll distribute it to the people and the food, and we'll have medical care, and all these wonderful things will be if you join us. But the Kuomintang's been winning the early part of the war, and so Mao's army has been shrinking. Mao was not even at one point in time the head of the army, okay? His friend Lin Piao was really running more of the army who was. Later on, he got rid of Lin Piao. This is kind of the way it works in these things. Anyway, Mao's army is shrinking, and so he has to escape to the northwestern part of China. You see there that what's known, it's their version of Washington and Valley Forge, is Mao and the Long March. A couple thousand miles to bring his people out to escape from the Kuomintang. Okay, I can see that, and certainly it's portrayed heroically over there. What they don't tell you is that they didn't sit there and let the Japanese batter away at the Kuomintang for most of World War II. The Red Army does not get terribly involved in World War II. Mao's pretty smart. He's figured out how this is going to work. I'm going to spend all my time telling you, if you help us when the time comes to get rid of the Kuomintang, we will take care of the workers and the peasants and the farmers and all these other people. We will fight for you, okay? And so as the Japanese are wearing down the Kuomintang, Mao is collecting, he's saying, hey, United States, you're sending all this material to the Kuomintang. How about us? And we did. We sent military people to talk to them, and we wanted to get weapons to them because obviously we wanted to get rid of the Japanese. And so as the war is being won, the Kuomintang has been getting worn down by the Japanese army, and Mao's army is gathering up more numbers, more arms, more equipment, and kicks their propaganda into high gear. That's the poster on the right there. Okay. In the end of the Chinese Civil War, when he officially declares victory in 1949, in the last 2 years, massive numbers of Kuomintang army people had been deserting to join Mao and the Chinese Communist Party's Revolutionary Army. Okay? Those will be the guys who will be in the front lines in Korea, who will be told to run and attack the American positions even if they don't have a weapon. They're not going to retreat, because if they retreat, they get shot. And the idea is very much, if any of you have seen, there's a movie done a number of years about Stalingrad, where they send guys charged across there and said, I don't have a weapon. Don't worry, one will be available soon. When that guy falls, you pick up his weapon. And that's something that they did in the CCP army too. Okay? One of them, in fact, and there's some really great books being written now by Chinese who have left and who, during the time they were in China, were able to dig into archives. And then when Tiananmen Square happened, they figured, I better get out of here because I'm going to be on somebody's list. And they've written some really great biographies and histories. And one in particular gives a whole lot of behind the scenes what's going on with Mao and his inner circle. Mao's brother-in-law, no, I take that back. His son-in-law was one of the guys that was sent to charge these positions because he had been in the Kuomintang one point in time. And for 3 years, he knew the guy was dead and did not tell his daughter. Where's my husband? Oh, I'm sure he's fine. He knew he was dead. Gives you a little insight into the guy, okay? Mao Zedong is the greatest mass murderer in history. These kids that you're talking to today know about the Nazis. Good. Know about what Hitler did. Isn't that the what is it, Godwin's law? First one to use Nazi in an argument, you lost the argument. Okay, it's easy. Nobody's going to defend the Nazis. We all know that. We're doing business with the Chinese Communist Party, guys. Okay. They surpassed the Nazis, Hitler's Holocaust, 6 million Jews, 5 million others. People don't talk about that. 6 million Jews, 5 million other what? Russians, gypsies, homosexuals, political opponents, artists, writers, religious men. Most of us have heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He's a victim of the Holocaust. Okay. So 5 million others. Mao, as he's taking over, 1948, he has a meeting of his council. We're going to have to collectivize the farm to take control. Go ahead.
No.
You had something you want to say? Okay.
I was trying.
There's a famine that's going to come as a result of that. He knows that, and he's going, well, probably 10%, maybe more. Or we're talking about a country at that time, 500, 600 million is our best estimate then. So 50 million. And he just says that, yeah, it's going to take 10%. Okay. The Great Leap Forward, which happens in the 1950s. What does that mean? That means, we're going to have to go farther in there and collectivize more. Current estimates are 45 million to 75 million died in the Great Leap Forward. Bodies were floating down the Yangtze River. Okay. That's the only way we knew how bad it was. The Cultural Revolution. Now, there wasn't nearly as many deaths that we can tell. But in many ways, the Cultural Revolution almost broke the back of the country. Why? Because the idea behind the Cultural Revolution was to have family members tell on each other. The picture you see at the top there are men who were intellectuals, who were found reading Western idea books. And so they were told on by their family members. Their children were encouraged. If you got an uncle, an aunt, a grandfather, remember, all these people are all pretty much in the same village. So everybody knows everybody else's business. And so you're encouraged, that's all right. We're going to help straighten them out and fix them and have them think rightly and that sort of thing.
Sounds familiar.
I didn't want to go there. Thank you for doing it.
Sounds so
Okay.
familiar. Just
Because
came
I
from
think
the
that is
zero.
what's going on right now in this country is a cultural revolution. And if you've been one of those people who have been in a situation where people at Thanksgiving don't want to talk to each other, you don't want to, and they're telling some of them don't invite your family members that don't agree with your viewpoint on things over to Thanksgiving or get together or don't talk to them on the phone anymore. This is exactly the same technique that was used in the Cultural Revolution. And you shouldn't be surprised because a lot of these professors are Marxists. The only ones that have been left in this country are the ones that have been protected with tenure in educational institutions, and their job is to produce more like-minded people. It's no longer you're going to go to school in order to open your thought and think other ideas and to be open to different thoughts. Now, we're not going to invite this person. If we invite this person, we're going to riot. And if this person comes in there anyway and they get protection, then we're going to bang on the doors and the windows. Anyone ever seen the picture of Jordan Peterson trying to give a talk up in Canada while people are banging on and breaking the windows? This is happening in the West. Now, the one that we're most familiar with is Tiananmen. Now, we don't know how many people died that night, but that's not really the point of what happened. Everyone got the message. When I went over there in 2013, we had a couple of people that talked to us, said, just be smart. And I put up certain blogs and things. They said, but a lot of it you won't be able to put up because of what they call the Great Firewall of China. Okay? You won't be able to post things. We figured out how to post things. My wife was able to follow me the whole time in China. But we were very muted in what we said. And we talked more about things when we came back. And to me, the Tiananmen's the real statement there is, okay, here's the deal. We're going to give you financial opportunity. We're going to bring Chinese-style capitalism. It's sort of a capitalism with a mix of totalitarianism. And no one is going to be immune from this. If you've been tracking what's happened with Jack Ma lately, you know what I'm talking about. This guy who's head of Alibaba, and he's been disappeared for months, and he'll show up somewhere for an hour or so, and he disappears again. This guy's worth billions, but the Chinese government's sending him a message. Okay? They're still in control. And all those Politburo members own stock.
They're capitalists.
Yeah, they're capitalists, but they're totalitarian capitalists. And that's the deal that they made. We are going to give you a certain amount of financial opportunity. But freedom, personal freedom, political freedom will not be part of that. If you have any doubt about that, look at Hong Kong. Okay? Look at what's going on in Hong Kong. I know you want to ask me something.
Well, no, I don't want to keep interrupting, but what about the scientist who was talking about what came out of the Wuhan?
Oh, the
lab?
Wuhan thing we could spend hours on.
Okay.
Now, let me just say one thing about Wuhan, okay? And this tells you the nature of this regime. They were not allowed to travel to Beijing, Xi'an, any of the other cities, but they were allowed to get on planes and go to Italy and the United States and Europe. What does that? Don't tell me they didn't know what they were doing.
They read Sunset.
That's right. That's right. He wrote the book, as they say. And then, of course, there's the Cambodian killing fields. People say, well, 2 million. Of 8 million people in the country, 1/4 of the population, and was the thing that would get you killed? You were an intellectual. You were a teacher. You read things.
You had glasses.
You had glasses. No, obviously, you read things. You're gone. Anybody who could be smart enough to oppose the regime, okay? And we don't need Castro's Cuba, who knows? Romania, Ceausescu, we could go on and on. They're all communist regimes, okay? All right. Why does this happen? Because in order to make socialism, communism work, you must force compliance. For socialism to work, it must be all of society. There can't be free will. The individual can't say, well, I don't want to, thank you. We're going to see whether we're going to be able to get on a plane without a vaccine passport, aren't we? That's why so many died in the collectivizations. A lot of them said, no, I'm not giving up my farm. I'm not going to turn over my land to you to plant on it. I want to keep it in my family. I got to make sure my family can feed. I want to be able to take my excess crops and sell them so that I can go out and fix my house or give my daughter some money to get started on her life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, with socialism, it's all about the greater goods must triumph over individual rights. You can't say that because I'm offended. Yes, I better have free speech. Yes, but the greater good says that's hate speech because I don't approve of it, and so don't the rest of us. James Madison was very concerned. He opposed a democracy. Let me say that again. People don't understand when I used to say in my class. He opposed a democracy. Wait a minute, aren't we a democracy? No, we're a republic. We're a republic because democracies become the tyranny of the majority. They will always oppress the minority. Even if it's 51-49 or 50-50 one-time vote cast. So the interesting thing, if you really want to test this out, find someone who emigrated here from a former communist country. They're the ones that are most alarmed. They've seen this movie before, and it does not end well. And they came here going, thank God that will never happen in America.
We're a little past that part already. Because Bill Gates already bought farmland.
Well,
Just saying.
I know.
What's he doing with all that farmland?
Just saying.
Anyway.
I've seen this before.
I know.
I've really seen this before.
You do. You talk to them and they'll tell you. They've seen this movie before.
Mhm.
They've seen the government talk these kind of things before. They've seen the media make these kind of claims before, then not correct it. Okay? They've seen individuals demonized into silence. Here are some pictures from my Chinese trip. Yep, Coca-Cola's there. That's what a can of Coke looks like in China. And then there we are, my brother and his two girls in the Forbidden City. And again, I have to say this once in a while just to make sure people understand. I'm talking about ism, not ists. And even at that, I think most Chinese, if you got rid of that government, you really had a kind government there, they'd be thrilled.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Venezuelans that come here go, please do something. And we're caught between it. We've seen that movie before too. It was called Vietnam. Okay? So we can't fix everything. But we sure can make sure that our own house is in order. Okay? I had a great time in China. The people were wonderful. I didn't put a picture in there. I almost put in here. I was coming down from the Great Hall of China, and I'd had a problem with a knee. I had a knee brace on. And I was really having a problem. And somebody just, Chinese person just ran up and just helped me. Must have been 200 steps down to the bottom. Nobody said anything. They just saw. And that's another thing that's great about those societies. They value seniors.
Yeah.
They don't look at seniors and go, oh, no, they look at seniors and they go, wisdom, experience. We value that. It could be my grandparent there. I'm going to help. I never forgot that. Made a big impression on me. All right. So what has changed? What we like to call corporate wokeness, right? Whoops. I'm going to quote the historian Victor Davis Hanson here, who really, I thought, put it in a nutshell something he wrote recently about what's going on with woke capitalism. Walls on the border are passé, but walls around Silicon Valley and Napa estates are necessary.
Yeah.
Guns should be banned, except for my security detail. Big carbon footprints are killing the planet, except for those of my own private jet. Okay. And again, I'm not saying obviously everyone wants more security for guns. Everyone wants, the planet to be healthy, and we're still debating. I think we're still debating about what is going on, whether climate change is coming as a result of that. But at least some of us are discussing, and some are saying the discussion is over. I've heard that before. That's what my mom said when she wanted me to go to bed and didn't want me to argue with her anymore. Discussion is over. Okay. But the nanny state cannot tell you that. C.S. Lewis had an interesting observation when people were talking about totalitarian states that promise all sorts of good things. He said, out of all tyrannies, A tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience.
Yeah,
You said it all.
yeah.
So, as I said, today's tyranny is woke capitalism. Here are some helpful things to keep in mind. Top left there, how socialists think socialism works, it says, and they both say poor equal to rich, and the socialist paralyzed. How socialism actually works, both poor and rich will get poorer. Like that taco I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. How socialists think capitalism works, poor get less, rich get more. How capitalism actually works, poor get more, and rich get more. Folks, one of the things is basic economics. It's not a zero-sum game. That was the old mercantilism. I used to teach that in my history classes. It's one of the reasons we had the American Revolution. Now Americans don't understand that. It was mercantilism. Why? Because we wanted to take all that codfish we were catching in Massachusetts and the tobacco we were growing in Virginia, and we wanted to sell it to the Dutch and the Dutch West Indies and the French and the Indies as well. And Britain said, no, you can only sell to British. And so what did we do? We became a nation of lawbreakers and pirates until the British, after the French and Indian War, said, all right, we're clamping down on everything. You got to pay for the French and Indian War. And, now we're really going to enforce these trade rules. That was even more of a resistance movement than the Stamp Act and all these other things, was the restrictions on trade. And that's the way Americans have always been. We're always looking for an opportunity. Let's put a McDonald's in Moscow. I went to a McDonald's in China. They serve a lot of noodles there. Smart. But the fact of the matter is, does anybody know what the number one American restaurant is, chain restaurant is in China?
KFC.
You won't believe it.
KFC.
You're right. It's Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Wow.
Okay, I know. Everywhere. I got pictures of it. Every time. I'm going to take a picture in every city we went to where there's their KFC. And sure, plenty of them. Okay. So anyway, and as Margaret Thatcher once said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. They don't understand that. We had a discussion with one of my former students one time who was getting married. And this was, about 8 years ago, Glo? Who was telling us about, she was so excited the government was going to give her some money to put as a down payment for a house. And my wife said, you're welcome. She said, no, it's coming from the government. She said, right, you're welcome. They really, and this is a smart young lady, they really don't understand where that's coming from. Well, the government's going to, no, they're not. They're going to take it from people like me because I pay taxes. These are the people like you who are not yet at the level where you pay taxes. That doesn't mean I oppose it. I just think it's important that they know where it comes from. It's not on trees, as my parents said. Money doesn't grow on trees. Yeah, it does. It is a tree. Shut up. Anyway, aren't all business leaders conservatives and capitalists? No. Now, how many of them are true believers and how many of them think that they are buying protection? That I'm not sure of. Keep your eye on things as it goes along. Mark Zuckerberg, sleep with one eye open.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And I'm not saying danger. I'm just saying that you can only buy so much protection before people begin to figure out, wait a minute, he's got too much.
Facebook gone.
Yeah?
I got rid of it.
I got rid of mine too, but everybody forgets this is something that also you need to know. What do these other these countries own? Because they bought up a lot of stuff. How many of you know that Instagram is owned by Facebook? I'm getting rid of Facebook, but I keep my Instagram. Well, they're the same company.
Yes, there are only 6 major companies running the world.
My only social
WhatsApp?
media now is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Which I can't get.
Which is Microsoft.
Yeah.
So it and again, I'm just saying, just be aware of it.
Yeah.
Just be aware of it and find out what they're doing with your data and see if there's a data tracking replacement for it. Because over time, if that starts happening, that will cause them to change. They're in the business of making money. They think right now this is where everybody is. They're wrong, because the people who feel differently are too busy, trying to make money and raise a family to be out marching in the streets. But you can, like, for instance, I think there's a reason Netflix was down in its subscribers. I can't prove this, but I think a lot of people saw things like cuties and said, what am I subscribing to Netflix for? And they just quietly just closed their account. They're not going to write a nasty letter, and they're not going to march in the streets, but they may just say, that's it. And just look at what's going on. We refer to the media in this country, we used to say, what, mainstream media, lamestream media. It's the corporate media. Do you know who owns them?
6 companies.
Yeah.
6, only 6.
Yeah.
Looks like
AT&T's ahead of a lot of it.
It's only 6.
So they're all, ABS, CBS, NBS. Yes, I didn't make a mistake when I said that. Okay. They're all owned by major corporations. I get that. I'm not one of these the evil corporations planning. I'm just saying, be aware of it. So I'm saying, be aware of it. So, no, where were they educated? What were they taught when they're educated? Some of them didn't finish school, like Mark Zuckerberg,
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. Okay. Now, maybe that was a good thing. I don't know. What was the culture like there? What was their ideology when they came out of there? Besides making money and trying to control things and being willing to stick a shiv in anybody that they had to. I'm telling you, if you've not seen it, watch The Social Network. It's enlightening. And that's not the only guy with that kind of story, I can guarantee you. Another one to watch is The Pirates of Silicon Valley, Gates and Jobs. And they both stole major stuff in order to make their companies go. Jobs stole the mouse and window and Macintosh operating system, and then Gates robbed the Macintosh operating system and made Windows. Yeah, so that's just it's we could say Andrew Carnegie and J.P. Morgan, all that sort of stuff. I'm just saying that that's why I use that term robber barons in there. I mean, I picked that quote because that term's in there, because that's what they're hearing in school. Evil, industrious, robber barons. What's the difference? Whether it's steel for Carnegie or oil for Rockefeller, or your data for Mark Zuckerberg, or if I'm going to be Twitter and cut off the president of the United States. Okay. Who are their staff and aides? These guys have been going around talking about Georgia's voting. Anybody reads, I'm telling you, who's got a really good précis on that. Go look at former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich's website, and read about the Georgia law. He was a Georgia congressman before he's Speaker. He knows that law. And the funny thing is, they're moving that baseball game from Atlanta, where it would have helped thousands of Black-owned businesses, to Colorado, which has got nothing like the percentage of Black-owned businesses in Denver. And their laws on voting are stricter than Georgia. In fact, you want to know who's the stricter of just about all of them? Is Delaware, where, never mind, I'm not going there. Okay. So what is, that's right. What information is being given to these people as facts? To some extent, they're being, now, are they being fed it? And this often happens. I'm only going to feed them things that fits with the boss's point of view. That's understandable. Okay. But I think some of them are getting a little bit of an education right now.
Can I just bring Bill Gates, from what I understand, Bobby Kennedy's son, Robert Kennedy Jr., has on his website Child Fund or something, Child Defend, and it's all about Bill Gates. Supposedly went into India and Africa with some kind of, I guess, immunization experiments or vaccines, whatever. Yeah. Well, I think if Bill Gates, he will be arrested if he goes back into India. And Africa said to him, "You're using our children as experiments."
They kicked him out of several countries in Africa.
But see, now, go ahead.
The people that are on Zoom.
The people on Zoom are not catching a lot of this. So we've got a lot of information coming from our audience here about people that have been following this. And again, one of the things it does show again is that if you're willing to do the work, there's a lot of information out there. And you should be skeptical. Okay?
Yeah, don't believe everything that's on.
That's right. So avoid the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram mob. And I just encourage you, it's time to step up and push back. And that doesn't mean getting people's faces. That won't work. Quietly saying, were you aware of? And you may get a reaction saying, okay, well, I just wanted to know if you're aware of it. But you'll never know someone that's actually kind of hoping that there's another viewpoint on that. Okay? And we're going to have to do this individually. You know, this is not, people say, we're going to have a civil war. No, we're not. Oh, this is another Cold War. No, it's not. This is a reality war. Okay? And that's what it is. And that concludes my presentation, and my wife gets the first question.
That's right.
I got to go back and.
I was wondering if you would make a plug to the people on Zoom for the PragerU Stories of Us.
Okay. All right. The question my wife has asked, and I agree wholeheartedly. And obviously, my number one plug is support Cal. I say this as a teacher here, but also this is very, very close to my heart. We all want to do something to help. And the number one thing you can do is help us give a proper education to this generation of kids. Boy, they're thirsty for it. And we're not in here trying to counteract, with other information or something like that, or do a counter program. It's not all. We're giving them a classical education like our framers got. I come in here before my class every day, and I get to see the Latin class go on, and those kids are doing great stuff, and they're learning important things. As I said, words mean something. Boy, you understand what words mean, you got a future in your life. You can write, you can speak, you can create, and so that's really important. What my wife's question was about, there's a series that PragerU, and I just love PragerU. The fact that they've gotten deplatformed from a number of things tells you that they're doing good work. And they've got a number of things called the Story of Us. And these are all people who had only heard one view of the world, and then suddenly kaboom. And there's a lot of interesting names that come up. One of them was Walter Williams, who Cal sponsored a talk a couple of months before he passed on recently. I look on that and very cherish that memory. A lot of talking about Thomas Sowell. A lot of talking about hearing Jordan Peterson. And it really doesn't mean so much the people. It's just college, when we all went to higher education, you might have a professor who's one way, another professor is another way. That was the great thing about it. And then you'd have debates. I remember having debates long into the night about the Vietnam War, about how we're going to solve poverty and all that stuff. Right now, they're not allowing that to happen. And that's intentional. And it's not just the students. Okay? It's not just the students. And so places like, institutions like Prager University are doing great things with their little 5-minute précis. And the Story of Us is some of these people that have really got amazing stories of courage. Take a lot of courage, because with social media, once they put a post up on Facebook or on Twitter, it's forever. And it can ruin, or at least I shouldn't say ruin in some places it probably does ruin a career, but it may make them choose another career. In a lot of cases, they say, it got me out of a very well-paying job and into doing something where it's really important. And I'm grateful we have people like that still in this country. And I think there's a lot of them. They just feel very alone right now. We've got to stop feeling alone. We're not alone. And don't get me into whether or not we're a majority right now. That gets us to a whole nother discussion we haven't got time for. But anyway, thank you very much, Glo, for reminding me of that. Yes.
17 years ago in Concord, New Hampshire, I heard a presentation by some guy who ended it with, he described Karl Marx as being one of the biggest bums and freeloaders that there ever was. He died owing at least dozens, if not hundreds of people, a bunch of money, which obviously he never paid back. And can you confirm that?
I've heard the same story. I haven't looked as much into his life as a biography as to his ideas. Go ahead.
Never had a real job.
Yeah, the question is about Karl Marx, and did he stiff a bunch of people when he died, and was he kind of a bum? And you're saying
He married money, never had a real job.
he married money and never had a real job is the answer from our chairman. So there you go.
Yeah, his mother-in-law wanted him to make capital, not talk about it.
His mother-in-law made him want to make Kapital and not talk about
What
it,
was
yeah.
his relationship with Engels? Because I always heard like Engels was basically like sugar daddy.
The question is about his relationship with Engels.
Well, and that just that like, maybe he just liked the stuff Marx was talking about and just basically supported his lifestyle so he could just keep.
Yeah.
battling
I don't
on
know.
about the class
There's
struggle.
I have to claim ignorance on that.
There's a Thomas Sowell video on Marx on YouTube.
Yeah, it's true. There is a Thomas Sowell video on Marx on YouTube, and I watched about the first 15 minutes or so of it. It's not him talking, it's somebody reading it from one of his
Right.
books who does an
Yes,
audio of
right.
it, and it's very
a little
good.
Dry.
So it's Thomas Sowell is, but Thomas is just all about the facts. That's all he is.
So he came out of college as a Marxist.
Yes, he did. That's true. And Thomas Sowell, if you have not seen the Thomas Sowell documentary, find it.
Awesome.
I'm sorry?
Question I want to tell-
Yeah, the question is
I have
about Thomas
somebody
Sowell.
here Who's saying, what did they say? Who's on there?
Yes, right. So my wife knows if somebody's not, if we're not able to understand what we're talking about here. We're talking a lot about Thomas Sowell. We're talking about Marx and his personal life and his relationship with Engels. I'm less familiar with that than their ideas. But
Just from a historical perspective, you were saying that I guess communism started 150 years ago, or the
Manifesto is in 1848.
Have there been any societies pre 150 years that kind of emulated that, communism? I mean,
Right.
It just seems like this is so recent.
Yeah. There's been some people who've had fun with the fact that the early Pilgrims tried to do a collective organization.
Yeah.
And in the end, that didn't work out well.
Almost
Look,
starved to death.
again, it's human nature. If we tried to make eagles mate in a way they're not supposed to, or have any kind of animal performance behavior, we know how hard it is to train dogs, and they're domesticated. They're still, once in a while, my dog will do something, and my daughter-in-law who's a dog trainer said, well, he's a dog. He just throws up a hand, he's a dog. Humans, there are always going to be some that want to be taken care of. There are always going to be some that want to achieve something. And you can't make people force into the same mold. It's just, we don't do it. And the only way you can even come close to making that work is you have to be a tyranny. And we formed this country to fight tyranny, not become a new one. Yeah.
But I feel a sense of impending doom.
Yeah, I know.
With what's happening. I do. I don't
I know.
mean to.
No, I
And
understand.
I've been an optimist throughout my life,
Right,
but not anymore, not since the election,
right,
certainly not since
Right,
January 20th.
right. Okay.
And with everything,
Okay, yeah, I know, and I've only got so much time. So she's saying that she was a lifetime optimist, and she's never had such an sense of impending doom. I get that, and as a historian, there's lots of examples of that. You want to really have something that we know how it's going to work out, but watch The Wilderness Years, a series that was done years ago on the BBC about Winston Churchill in the 1930s, and he's watching all this happen, and all they want to make sure is they don't want another World War I, they don't want to fight the Somme again. And so, Hitler's not a bad person. So we've been through this before. I remember my mom telling me about World War II. The first 6 months, she says there was no good news. Every day, some other place, we were surrendering. We were giving this up. The Japanese were marching through this. The Germans were marching through that. Okay? All it takes is for us to be who we are. We are Americans.
That's why I suggested the stories of us from PragerU, for people like you who feel they feel scared and down. And when you watch these stories, there are people from all walks of life, even Hollywood, who reveal that they were raised on the left. People in all over the country in different places, times, people who, and it's wonderful because you become aware of how natural this goodness of the United States, this goodness is, how natural it is.
Yeah, I don't know how many people could hear what you're saying. My wife is just, again, giving a detailed plug for this Prager University series called The Story of Us, because if you are feeling down, it's understandable. And to some extent, okay, I'm going to watch myself here. There are certain individuals who want us to feel like this is over. It's done. Okay? The decision has been made, the country's behind all this, and this is over. This is done. It's not. Okay? That's the beautiful thing about America. We keep reinventing ourselves. That's why I love teaching American history. We have not been around that long. What is it, 250 years? What a great history. And you know why it's a great history? Someone from every part of the world has come here and become an American. My wife lived for a while in Canada. My wife lived for a while in Holland. Even if she'd stayed all her time there and become a citizen, she would never be considered Dutch, or she would only be considered American probably. My daughter's now in Canada, married to a Canadian. Now he's a Polish Canadian because he immigrated from Poland. But you come to the United States, you hold up a hand, you swear in it, doesn't make a difference whether even you can't speak English. You're an American now because it's about the ideals that we hold. Okay, which are completely counter to this.
Mhm.
We're about individual rights. We're about freedom and liberty. We're about free speech and standing up. And that's what we're going to do. And you don't have to go march in the streets, and you don't have to get in the long fights with your friends and family. One by one, individually. You'll surprise some people. And then you'll have people who will come up to you and go, I agree with you. You know, you've probably had it happen already.
Oh, yeah. Times.
Okay? And so then you look at them quietly and just say, next time, say that a little louder.
Yeah, but how are we going to fight against big tech, the mass media, and those people like Soros and Gates, people that are funding this? I mean, we're talking about deep-seated. It's not just Biden and what he's doing. It's not just what Kamala Harris. It's not just what even Barack Obama is telling Biden to do. It's about the people behind the wealth. So much money is behind this.
Okay.
How in the world do you fight
Okay. So that you know what's going on, and I understand what she's saying. I'm just going to enter that really, really small and really short, and that is, there's more of us than there are of them. They don't want you to believe that, but there are
I want
more
to
of
agree.
us.
He's right.
If we say for a store, just put this out there. You say, how do we fight? Store says, you need to wear a mask. I'm not gonna do it, you go in. So another person goes in, telling you need to wear a mask. We all go in, we're not wearing a mask. We're gonna go in. If they all say, and then we don't want to go buy anything and they're there, we all leave. The power of the mind of the people is the most important thing that we have, and they try their best to make us forget that. We never fought with our fists. We always, by revolution, fought with our mind.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to recommend something, and then I got to cut things off here. There's a piece that I saw recently that was written, and I'm going to try to find it. I think I may have sent it to you, where it talked about Thomas Paine's American Crisis. Okay, get that out and read that again. Just the first page of it. This is right before Washington decided to take what was left of his army, which was all going to dissolve in just a couple of weeks when their enlistments ended at the end of December 1776. Okay, he's up against it. He's on the other side of the Delaware River. They're only putting 1,000 soldiers over there to watch his army because they think they're going to fall apart soon. You know, they put these Hessians over there on the other side. And he started reading we've always heard about Thomas Paine and Common Sense. To me, his greatest contribution was the crisis. These are the times that try men's souls, the summer patriots, okay? We are not summer patriots. Nobody's bombing us. You know, no foreign country is trying to crush us. This is us. This is up to us, okay? And so just start being who we are. We're Americans, and we have freedoms, and we're going to use them. And we're going to, you know, Martin Luther King spent a lot of time in jails against unjust laws. If you think that face masks is an unjust law and you're willing to take a fine for it, do it. You'll find other people say, oh, I wish I'd done that. Well, why didn't you? Because and again, you may not feel that way. That's fine. That's part of being an American. We used to be able to say, well, I agree. Well, I don't. Okay. Well, we're going to have to agree to disagree. Remember that? That's what we should be doing. And that's what we're trying to teach our kids here, to think for themselves, to think clearly, to think critically, and to be contributing and proud Americans in the greatest country on the earth. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Hard to follow that, huh? Thank you, Keith. That was wonderful. I think the bottom line for me tonight is the importance of knowing our history. That's my takeaway. Mark Twain said, of whom you often like to quote, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And so perhaps we see some rhymings going on, and it's helpful to put it in context tonight. I think understanding our history, warts and all, is extremely important. And that's one of the things that we do at Cal, and we spend time every day, no matter what grade they're in, every single day, 5 days a week, they get history. There's a reason why we pay special attention to it. And then we go and we see it. We visit these places that we study to see Gettysburg, and to recite the Gettysburg Address where Lincoln said it. It changes you as a person. And to stand overlooking the Potomac and looking back at the white columns of Mount Vernon, it's inspiring. And then to stand at the edge of the Delaware on December 31st, or in the summertime, and to sit there and imagine the wonderful, heroic men that crossed that river that night, that icy night, when they forced history to take a hard turn. That's important to know. So we need to know our history, but our children need to know it. So if you ask the question, what do we do as Americans? We teach them. We share with them, but I would say we share the facts, because their individual thought is important. Churchill said, the farther back you can look, the farther forward you can see. These history sessions are developed to help us sharpen our knowledge so we can see farther forward. So like our two first sessions tonight, we have you all here, we have many people online, and it is because of your support that we're able to do this. And we've been getting donations, and for that, I am extremely grateful. So thank you, and thank all of you. And we did record tonight's session, so we're going to make it available to you later next week. I'm going to close with a quote from Jefferson. He said, whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted to be their own government. That whenever things go so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied upon to set things right. I think that's enough. God bless and good night, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.